I am aware that you will be in a lesson now, so I'm just recording this lesson so that you can download it and then watch it back when you are free to do so. So today we're going to be covering the national governing bodies, because that was something that you said you wanted to revise. Let me just get the PowerPoint up. Okay, so like I said before, we're doing this because this is something that you felt that you wanted to revise before the exam, which is absolutely fine. Let me see if I can play it. So throughout this lesson, when you're watching it back, I will be asking you questions. What I want you to do is pause the video, answer the question, and then resume it when you have answered the question. Okay, so to start off, what I would like you to do is answer the question that is in the blue box, which says while you wait. So it says, what do these national governing bodies stand for, and what sport are their national governing bodies for? So I've given you an example that the FA would be Football Association, and that is for football. Okay, so the ones that you have to do, 1, 2, 3, RFU, LTA and EBC. If you could just pause the video and write that down. Brilliant. So hopefully you have got your answers for these questions now. We'll go through them. So you should get, for number 1, it is the Rugby Football Union, and they are for Rugby Union. It shouldn't say Football Union there. Number 2 is the Lawn Tennis Association, which is for tennis. And then the ECB is the English and Wales Cricket Board. So if you've got them, brilliant. In the exam, you will have to know what these stand for. So if you don't know any governing bodies, what I suggest you do is just maybe look on the internet at what some sports governing bodies are. Okay, so if you could get a pen and paper ready, write today's title, which is National Governing Bodies, if you haven't done so already, and then we can make a start. Oops. Okay, so these are just some examples of the national governing bodies. You've got the Football Association, which is the FA, the Rugby Football Union for England Rugby, England Netball is England Netball, England Hockey, and the British Gymnastics. And what you need to know in this part of the exam is you need to know what their roles are. So what do they do for their sport? And how we remember it is this little acronym at the side, so DIPPSF. Okay, and they all stand for the roles for the national governing bodies, and you'll need to know these for your exam. It says national governing bodies are independent, so that means that each sport will have a national governing body. There's not just one for all of sport. Each sport will have its own national governing body, and they have a responsibility to govern, so they have to look after their sport, and they also need to manage their sport in the country. So they need to make decisions, which we will look at a little bit further in this PowerPoint. Okay, so if you want to just get these letters down the side of your piece of paper, you can pause the video and just write them down. Okay, so the first role of the national governing body that you need to know is the promotion. Okay, so we need to know, they need to be able to promote their sport. This will involve different marketing strategies to try and persuade people to take part in their sport rather than something else. And they do this to increase the participation. So they are wanting people to select their sport rather than another sport. National governing bodies also want to increase the amount of media attention that their sport is getting, and they'll increase the exposure of the media, of their sport in the media. So that means that they want more opportunities of their sport being shown on TV, so we can watch it, and when we watch it, it means that we'll be more likely to be inspired to take part. on the radio, listening to it, or even in the newspapers, reading about it. So that is what promotion means. Girls, you don't need to write this down just yet, because after I've gone through the slides, I'm going to ask you to do a task where you will have to recall some of this information. Okay, so the next thing that you need to remember for the exam is that another role for the national governing bodies is they're in charge of the development of the sport. So they need to be developing players so that they are performing at elite levels. And also they need to develop their coaches and officials that are involved in the sport. So that might be a manager or a coach. So for instance, in football, you might have a goalkeeping coach, or in hockey as well. They want people to come in and deliver skills to goalkeepers, and they need to be the best that they can possibly be. And they do this by putting on programs so that performers will follow the programs. So if they've identified somebody at a young age, at grassroots level, so people playing in school or for clubs on a Sunday morning, if they've identified a player there that has got potential to be very good, they will scout them, put them on a program to develop them into an elite player. This means that within the sport, they are getting the best possible players. Okay, they'll also be in charge of providing coaching awards. So if you don't know any coaching awards, having a look at sports websites and just looking at what awards are on offer for people if they want to get involved in that. You could, I for instance have my level 1 netball coaching award, which I had to do a course for, and they'll be the same for other sports. And they'll also be training officials. So if you are a referee in any of these sports, you need to have training and then have a test in order to say, yep, they are a qualified level 3 referee, or they are a qualified level 4 umpire. Okay, so these are ways that they develop people in their sport. Another role that they have is the infrastructure. Now, we have looked at this before, and we've said that good infrastructure increases the popularity of the sport, and we did that in another one of the learning objectives. The national governing bodies are responsible for their infrastructure of the sport. So if you can just remember what infrastructure is, it means like the makeup of the sport. We've said that many times that football has great infrastructure because you can easily go and play football on a 5-a-side pitch because there are lots of them. They'll be in charge of the competition and the rules as well. So they'll have to organise the leagues for different levels of competition. So if you look at football, the FA is responsible for the Premier League and all the matches that are going on a Saturday that we can watch on telly, but they will also be in charge of organising leagues that are at lower levels. So, for instance, a Sunday football league, they will still be in charge of making sure that there's competitions for them. If there's any decisions on the rules being changed, they will put them in place. For instance, in football, I know I keep using football, but it's just something that everybody is aware of. One of the rule changes coming back from the COVID is that they now can make 5 substitutes. It used to be 3 substitutes, but now they can make 5 substitutes, and that's a rule that they have brought in, the national governing body. They will also give out fines or penalties for players who are breaching the rules or show any kind of behaviour that doesn't fit, they don't want people to see. So, for instance, in the 90s, there was a player called Eric Cantona who played for Manchester United, and he got fined and had an 8-month ban because during a game he jumped into the crowds and beat up a fan. So that's sort of behaviour they need to discipline the players if they are making the wrong decisions. They're also in charge of giving out advice to clubs and coaches and officials about any insurance that they might need to know, and also they'll be in charge of developing facilities. So things like venues, they might to decide that they want to change the AstroTurf at a local sports centre, and they will be in charge of doing this. Now, there's three more that you need to be aware of. Okay, so another one is the policies and initiatives. So if we think of policies, they are things like we have in school. We have policies in school that we must follow. For instance, if we came back in January, there was going to be a policy about no mobile phones. Okay, and we would have to follow that. The procedures of that, if you had your mobile phone out, would be that it would get taken off you. And the same applies in sport. If you get caught cheating, then the procedure will be that you will be banned from the sport. And some of the things that the national governing bodies have done is they have put anti-doping policies in place. So these are all performance enhancing drugs that performers might take to make themselves better. If they get caught, what will happen to them, but also what drugs are classed as performance enhancing drugs. If you look at the British Gymnastics website, they have detail on banned drugs that they're not allowed in the sport, and if it came up in a drugs testing, then they would get banned from the sport. They also refer they also look at promoting proper etiquette and sporting behaviour and fair play. So that is kind of what I was saying before about Eric Cantona, the footballer. He didn't show great sporting etiquette or behaviour, so he got fined and he got punished as a result of that. They want players to be as positive role models as they can be. So anybody that is not following rules, for instance, quite a lot of footballers have just been caught with COVID, having meeting up with friends and family, even though they weren't meant to be. The national governing body will sanction these players and how they see fit. They'll also promote community engagement, and they will make sure, like teachers do, we have a responsibility to safeguard children. The national governing body have to do that too. So making sure that any safeguarding issues they are reporting. Okay, so that's your policies and your initiatives. The next role, the fifth role, got two more girls, is support, and they provide support for teams via the website, or people can phone in or complete forms, and they'll do this by the sort of support they give is advice on equipment and venues and surfaces. So for instance, if a surface is being played on, for instance, I think in our lesson we talked about hockey and what surfaces are acceptable to play on, the national governing body website will tell you that. They'll also talk about any equipment that is not allowed for your sport, and giving you all the advice that you need to know in order to be as safe as possible. Another thing that they will provide information on is if you want to get involved in a sport. So for instance, if I decide that I want to take up rugby, I could go on the RFU website, their national governing body, and look at all the places in my local area which will offer me the rugby, a rugby session, okay, and what age it will cater for, and when and where they're being held. Another thing that they will be, and the final thing, sorry, that they will be have a role for is the funding. So national governing bodies will decide on how the income that they receive will be spent within their sport. The way they get funding is they get funding from the Department of Digital Culture, Media and Sport, and that is a national department. So all sports will get it from this Digital Culture and Media Sport, but different sports will get different amounts of funding. So for instance, if a sport has done particularly well at the Olympics, they might get a little bit more funding to increase because the participation might increase. It's to support that. They also get money from the government, and they get money from grants. membership fees. So like I said before in the lesson, I am a England netball member. I have to pay a fee to England Netball, and what that does is they will get that money and then they can distribute it how they see fit. They'll get money from TV rights. So if you think of football, they have a deal with Sky Sports. They will get paid millions and millions of pounds for Sky to show the football games. And then with that money, they will distribute it how they see fit. They'll get money from sponsorship. So if you have a sport like football, for instance, and a business want to promote their business, they will pay an amount of money to the team so that they can show their business off. It might be on their shirts, or it might be in their stadium. And then money from any merchandise that is sold. So that could be T-shirts, kits, all that money will go to the national governing body. Like I said before, they then decide how it is distributed. So it might be that we're going to put this amount of money into developing facilities, or we are going to put this amount of money into developing our coaches. And that's how they would kind of they'll look at where their weaknesses are, and they'll put the money into that. And not only do they look at how they can distribute the funding, they also will tell you how you could apply, if you're a club, how you could apply for funding. Okay, so they're the six. These 6 here are what you need to know for the exam. Okay, so what I would like you to do now is, using the information that we've just gone through, is name the roles of the national governing bodies and highlight any of the key points from each of them, just so that you, even if it's just a sentence, just to remember what their role is. Okay, and this could be used as your revision notes. So I've done the first one for you. So development was the first one, and what we do for development, what their role is they concentrate on elite training, developing their players from grassroots and the national squads, and they're also in charge of developing coaches and officials. Okay, so you can see how I've done that one. What I would like you to do is just pause the video and then work through the other 5. Okay, and then we'll go through it. So if you could just pause it now and then write down what the other 5 roles are, and just a sentence for each one. Okay, so pause the video now. Right, girls, hopefully you've done that. So we'll go through each of them. So the first one was development, which I did. Okay, the second one, the I. Hopefully you've got down infrastructure. That means organising the matches and making decisions on rule changes, developing facilities and advice on insurance. The third one, it could be either one of 2. So if you've got promotion, because we've got 2 P's, remember, promotion, that is to increase people taking part in the sport and increasing the media coverage and attention to persuade people to take part. Policies and initiatives, so the anti-doping policy, promoting good etiquette, increasing community engagement and safeguarding children. Support, so advice for equipment, venues and playing surfaces, details for local clubs and details on how to get involved. And then the final role that you should have had down, beginning with F, is funding. So they get money from their sport, for their sport from the following. So any of those: Department of Media, Culture, Department of Digital, Culture, Media and Sport, government funding, grants, memberships, TV rights, sponsorship and merchandise. And then with that money, they'll decide how the funding is going to be spent. And they also give information on how teams can apply for funding. Right, an exam question. So I'm going to read the question. We'll do the first one. Okay, and then I'm going to ask you to pause the video whilst you answer. So the exam question is, the England and Wales Cricket Board, the ECB, are currently trying to increase participation through a variety of strategies. Match each strategy with the correct national governing body. Okay, so you can see that you've got the strategies down the left-hand side of the table here. These are all the strategies, and what you need to do is match which national governing body role it falls under. So we'll do the first one together. It's worth 4 marks, so we'll do the first one together. So you're definitely going to get 1 mark. All right. So it says develop an ability based pathway to develop young children through a national elite level. So straight away, when we read that, we should be thinking, right, they want to make the players better. Development. Okay. So if we look over at the national governing body roles, the third one down, this one here, this is an example of the governing body developing sports performers. Okay, so that's the one that we would match it to. All right, so if you could just pause the video and then work through the other 3, matching which one of the national governing body roles matches the strategy. Okay, so if you pause the video now. Okay, so hopefully you've done that. We're going to go through them. So the first one, create a new 5-a-side, faster version of the game with different rules. That one is an example of the infrastructure because it's talking about competition and developing the rules, changing the rules. Okay, so give yourself a tick if you've got that one. Third one is increase popularity through training, teaching ambassadors to encourage people to take part. That one is an example of, this is an example of the governing body promoting the sport, okay, because it's encouraging children to participate. And then the final one is invest in coaching, officiating, sports science and medicine. And that one is an example of governing body funding because they are investing, they're putting money into these things. Okay, so how many did you get right out of 4 there? Okay, next one, we're going to do another exam question. Identify 3 sources of funding available to national governing bodies that can be given to amateur sports organisations to develop grassroots participation. So straight away, you should be looking at your role that you've written down for funding and looking at ways that we can get, because remember, it's asking for the source of funding. So that means where has it come from? So I want you to just pause the video and write down 3 ways that we can get funding as a national governing body. So pause the video. Okay, so hopefully you've got any of the 3 of the following. So give yourself a tick. If you have, you only need 3, you don't need all of them. So if you haven't, just make changes. Okay, and then finally, what I would like you to do, if you have got time and you want to do a little bit more revision or research, is select one of the following national governing bodies to research. So choose one of them, write down on your piece of paper which one you're going to do. You can either do the FA, the Rugby Football Union, the England Netball, England Hockey or British Gymnastics. And what I would like you to do is visit the website and find out these 8 things. Now, you might need to write these down. So find out, how does that national governing body encourage new participants? Second thing, how does that national governing body support existing participants? So participants who are already in the sport, might be an elite player, it might be somebody at grassroots. How do they support them? 3, how do they publicise the sport? So looking at have they got social media? Have they got on their website ways that you can find out how to get involved? Have they got TV rights? Can you watch it on TV? Do you see it in the newspaper? Do you see it in magazines? So that sort of thing. 4, how does it promote equity, etiquette and fair play? So what rules have they got and how do they sanction players who are not following that? 5 is supports the development of sport at grassroots level. So how do they get players who are playing in a Sunday league just in the park, who are very, very good players, how do they support those players to make them into kind of professionals, to better players? Number 6 is, how do they develop pathways from grassroots to elite levels? So those 2 will kind of be similar, 5 and 6. Number 7 is how do they train officials? So looking at what sort of coaching awards they have available on their websites. And then number 8 is how do they support competitions and tournaments? Okay, so any competitions that they have done, looking at like England netball, for instance, looking at them. World Cup, when was that? Have they done a local tournament in, say, Lancaster, for instance? So looking at their website and finding out this information. Once you've done it, I want you to email it to me like you did with your 8-mark question. Thank you very much for those of you that have sent it. Email it me to either taking a picture or attaching it as a Word document onto the email, or even just writing it out on an email to me. All right, that's absolutely fine. If you have watched this back and you still don't understand, drop me an email. I will be available. I am teaching next, but I will always get back to you. Okay then, girls. Well, thank you very much for tuning into the video. Hope it makes sense and it helps you with your revision. I will be sending out those PowerPoints as soon as I possibly can. Okay then. So thank you very much. I'll see you soon.